Ever wonder what it would be like if the world got a complete reset button? Well, a long time ago, that's exactly what happened. Today, we read diving deep into one of the most epic stories ever told, Noah's Ark and the Great Flood. It's more than just a cute story about animals on a boat. It's a profound tale of faith, destruction, and a new beginning. So, let's set the scene. The world had become a pretty dark place. The Bible describes it as being filled with corruption and violence. It got so bad that God was grieved and decided to start over, to wash the world clean and give humanity a fresh start. But amidst all this chaos, there was one person who stood out. His name was Noah. He was described as a righteous man, blameless in his generation, who walked faithfully with God. Because of Noah's character, God chose to save him and his family from the coming judgment. So, God gave Noah a monumental task, a project so massive it's hard to even imagine. He told Noah to build an ark. This wasn't just any boat. It was a gigantic vessel, a floating fortress designed to withstand a cataclysmic flood. God gave him the exact blueprint. Make it out of gopher wood, seal it inside and out with pitch to make it waterproof, and build it with 3 decks, a roof, and a single door in its side. The dimensions were staggering, about 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. To put that in perspective, that's about 1.5 football fields long. And here's the crazy part. Noah was living on dry land, and up to this point, the kind of torrential rain needed for a global flood was something humanity had never experienced. Imagine the scene. Your neighbor starts building a massive boat in his backyard, miles from any ocean. He spends years, maybe even decades, working on this thing. You'd probably think he'd lost his mind, right? That's likely what Noah's neighbors thought. They probably mocked him, laughed at him, and called him crazy. But Noah didn't waver. He had heard from God, and he obeyed. This incredible act of obedience, in the face of ridicule and what seemed like complete nonsense, is the first major lesson of this story. He was building something for a future he couldn't see, based purely on a promise he couldn't prove. As the ark neared completion, the next phase of the plan began. God commanded Noah to bring his family into the ark. That's his wife, his 3 sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their wives. 8 people in total, ready to repopulate the earth. But they weren't going to be alone. God also instructed Noah to gather animals, not just a few farm animals, but 2 of every kind of creature that roamed the earth, a male and a female. For certain clean animals, he was to bring 7 pairs. This was to preserve life, to ensure that the animal kingdom would also have a new beginning after the flood. Can you imagine the logistics of that? It wasn't Noah running around with a net. The story implies that the animals came to him, guided by a divine hand. Once Noah, his family, and the entire menagerie were safely inside, God himself shut the door. This is a powerful image. The way of salvation was open for a long time while Noah built and preached, but at a certain point, the door was closed. And then it began. For 40 days and 40 nights, rain poured from the sky relentlessly. But it wasn't just rain. The Bible also says the fountains of the great deep burst forth. This suggests a double catastrophe: water from above and water from below. It was a complete unraveling of the created order. The waters rose and rose, lifting the massive ark off the ground. The boat that was once a symbol of ridicule was now their only hope, floating safely above the destruction. The floodwaters covered everything, even the highest mountains, and all life on the surface of the earth was wiped out. Only those inside the ark survived. Now, many people think the story ends after the 40 days of rain, but that was just the beginning of their time on the water. The rain stopped, but the waters remained for a very long time. In total, Noah and his family were inside that floating zoo for over a year. Think about that. Over a year cooped up with thousands of animals, floating on an endless ocean with no land in sight. This part of the story teaches us about patience in the storm. They had to wait. They had to trust that God hadn't forgotten them, that He had a plan and a perfect timing for their release. They were safe from the storm outside, but they had to endure the waiting inside. Finally, after many months, the waters began to recede. The ark eventually came to rest on the mountains of Ararat, which is in modern-day Turkey. But Noah didn't just burst the door open. He waited for God's command. To test if the land was dry, he first sent out a raven. The raven flew back and forth, probably scavenging on what was available. Then he sent out a dove. The first time, the dove returned, having found no place to land. A week later, he sent it out again, and this time, it came back with a freshly plucked olive leaf in its beak. This was the sign they had been waiting for, a symbol of new life and peace. The earth was healing. After sending the dove out one more time, and it not returning, Noah knew it was safe. When God finally told him to exit the ark, Noah, his family, and all the animals stepped out onto a clean, new earth. Their first act was to build an altar and worship God, thanking Him for their deliverance. It was a moment of profound gratitude and the start of a new chapter for humanity. And in response to Noah's faithfulness, God made a solemn promise, a covenant not just with Noah, but with all of humanity and every living creature for all generations to come. He promised that He would never again destroy the earth with a flood. And as a sign of this everlasting promise, He set a rainbow in the clouds. So every time we see a rainbow after a storm, it's meant to be a reminder of God's promise, a symbol of hope and a new beginning. So what can we take away from this ancient story today? It's not just a historical account, it's packed with meaning. It shows us that even when God brings judgment, He always provides a way of escape, a way of salvation for those who will listen and trust Him. For the people of that time, the ark was their salvation. It also highlights the incredible power of obedience, even when what you're asked to do seems illogical to the rest of the world. Noah's faith wasn't just a feeling, it was an action. He spent a lifetime building something based on God's word alone. And finally, it's a story about second chances. The flood wasn't just an end, it was a new beginning. It was a chance for humanity to start over, to build a world on a foundation of faith and gratitude. The story of Noah reminds us that no matter how big the storm in our own lives, there is always hope for a new day, for a fresh start. The storms will pass, the waters will recede, and a rainbow will eventually appear. As we reflect on this incredible journey, remember one key thing. It wasn't the nails that held the ark together. It was Noah's faith. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into timeless stories. Let me know in the comments what you find most inspiring about Noah's journey. Until next time, stay curious.